This is part two of the Midwest Meets the West kind of video edition of the ride report that I put up about a year and a half ago now on Adventure Rider. Finally getting around to editing videos. I had something like 250 gigabytes of video from this, so I've cut it down quite a bit, but it still left a whole day's worth of video just from riding around Moab. So we were actually only in Moab for about a day and a half. We rode. This is Pritchett Canyon, and I didn't really look up where we were going or consider rider experience level before going into this. I just picked some trails that looked like they might be passable on a bike. So we went in and quickly found out that one, my dad had never really ridden in sand before, and two, F800s are horrible in the sand if they don't have a steering damper on them, and they may even be bad with a steering damper. I don't know, I haven't ridden one with it, but after riding my dad's a few times on this trip, it was rough. The thing just wallows like crazy. So we had some fun in the sand figuring out how to ride in it. I didn't really know how to ride in it either, but the 950 makes it a lot easier. I've got some videos here from behind the bars of the F800 too. You can easily hear the difference in the bikes. So, Pritchett Canyon, this first part of it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was fine on the 950, but there were definitely some challenges as you get further along on it. And this, first rock step set that you're seeing here, this was the first one that we came to, and for me on the 950 it was fine, especially going down it. It wasn't a big deal. But after that, there was a series of steps that there was just no way that I probably was going to fall going up it, and certainly the F800 was going to be a bear to get up it. So we decided to turn around after I'd scouted it, and so I had to figure out how to get back up this series of steps. The general rule of this stuff is you never want to go down something you don't think you can get back up again. We had left all of our luggage back in the hotel, thank goodness, just so we could have a day of relatively light bike riding.
I think you're in.
My dad sank the F800 in the sand, so we had to wrestle it out. And by that point, it's a lot of work on that bike especially. So we come back out on this rock step, and the 950 is fine. But I rode the F800 up as well. And that bike has a really long first gear, and the clutch is really heavy and really hard to modulate compared to the 950. So I conveniently dropped my dad's bike on the rocks. The F800 was a lot of work to get even up the steps like that. The suspension's not stiff enough and all that. Of course, I've modified the 950 a lot to be able to do it.
Not quite.
I had advised my dad to go faster through the sand before I'd ridden his bike, and turns out it doesn't come up on planes, so he hit that sandy patch and just speed wobbled and went down. There was no saving it. I rode his bike after that, and it's a challenge. You gotta commit and just let the thing walk around. In the rocks, he did great though. This was on Fins and Things now. This is still in the morning. We went straight from Pritchett Canyon into the park. And at some point along the way, we discovered that Dad had lost his camera. And
There you go.
we didn't find it. We went back and looked at Pritchett Canyon to figure out if maybe one of the places that he'd gone down, if it was there.
Yeah,
And
my
it ended up,
better.
we found it. It was between the catalytic converter and the skid plate of his bike. It had fallen off the seat and slid down in there. So at this point, we'd gotten about halfway through Fins and Things where it crosses over. And Dad had gone back to the Slick Rock trailhead, and then I had just finished up Fins and Things solo, riding a little bit faster. And you can see I've kind of figured out how to get the 950 through sand in a straight line at this point in my riding career. But every time there's a corner, even a small corner, I slow way down. I hadn't gotten it figured out. I was still riding the thing like a street bike, leaning into corners. Since then, I've figured it out much better, but I was still learning here for sure.
Wow.
All the fins and ripples in the rock were really abusive after a while. You can't really go fast enough without feeling like you're beating the bike up to smooth it out. So the sandy patches were actually kind of a nice break, because even if the bike was moving around a lot and you had to hang on a little bit, it was a lot smoother.
Or just keep the throttle open.
And the view when you got up to the high points, you can just see forever.
Wow.
It had actually rained quite a bit the night before. You can't tell at all in the video. It had just soaked into the ground right away. You can see here I'm trying to figure out how to get the bike moving. I haven't quite figured out. I need to kick it up a gear and just give it more throttle and it'll work. But that was the deepest sand I'd probably ever ridden in up to that point.
Not getting stuck down there.
Thought it was cool how you can see all the rubber laid down on the rocks off in the distance. Cool thing about slick rocks, erosion's not really an issue. You just leave rubber wherever you want in the Jeeps.
Traction for days.
The slick rock's kind of interesting because it's got as much grip as pavement does. So you can really kind of be lazy with some of the hills, but if you get going too slow, it just picks the front wheel up.
You're going to hear me riding really close to you. The video is better that way. Okay.
So this is on Slick Rock Trail now,
Yes.
which is a mountain bike and motorcycle dual-use trail. This was after lunch. We'd gone to, there's an old Mexican place, the name of which I've forgotten, in town. Got burritos and then headed back out. You can see the clouds are starting to come in. We did have a pretty good storm that night too.
Dude, nice
You can
wheelie.
see the traction there. You just picks the front end of the bike right up. We'd had a few mishaps out on the rocks too.
Oh.
That BMW stalls really easy, as partly as a result of that first gear and that kind of pain in the ass clutch.
I might suggest not taking my line.
It was also really, really hot that day, especially in adventure gear. So at one point, because you're not really moving fast enough to cool the bike off, and the exhaust for the front cylinder on the 950 goes right over your right foot. And my foot got so hot that it was like it was starting to burn. I actually had to stop and take my boot off because it was, after a while, I couldn't stand it anymore. It just kept getting hotter. I think there's just so much heat that comes off that V-twin. There's no airflow really around the engine because of where the fuel tanks are, and the fans blow air right across your feet. All that heat's just in one place. The rocks are really interesting to ride on because of how hard they are. It's really hard to get a rhythm, and they don't change over time like an off-road trail or motocross track. You're going to end up with ruts and whoops that are kind of timed to the ride frequency of the suspension, and rocks don't change like that. So it's really, really hard to find a rhythm to start going faster without feeling like you're going to ding up your rims, especially on a heavy bike. You feel how hard the ground is too. Every time you pick the front end up for a wheelie, it comes down. It's just like setting a wheelie down on pavement. You feel it. You feel all those little bumps through your handlebars.
Right.
You can see lightning in front of me.
It out yet.
Right there. There's lightning off
That
to the
lightning
left.
is crazy.
So at this point, we were feeling like we needed to be off these rocks in the high points because there was quite a bit of lightning. So that was Moab, and the third and final part, we'll get to that shortly.